Funeral, I will see jnmil, advice on how to overcome the anxiety and just remain calm. Update at the end. Hey, so this is an update to the drama. If you want to know what's going on, look at my history. I'm currently in a crisis mode. I have been no contact with my in-laws since January, and they still refuse to address the issue, and per the phone call from my father-in-law an hour ago, we should just get over it. They already got over it. Yes, I know, that's why you never responded to anything at all, and I'm still no contact. They have obviously been painting me as the bad guy in this whole debacle, and my anxiety just spiked through the roof. My husband's great uncle died today. It was apparently expected. He had apparently not been doing well. We have been no contact, for me, and extremely low contact, my husband, with my husband's family for months. My husband hasn't spoken to his parents or sister since March, ignoring calls. We haven't wanted to deal with them, and this is my busiest season at my work. It was a stressful day to begin with, but we got a voicemail from my Phil, saying his uncle had died today. I told my husband to call his father. Father said there weren't any funeral plans, and then told my husband his childhood dog had died at Easter, and my Phil's uncle is in the hospital also. Then he started talking about random things. Have a nice chat with my husband. My husband was clearly still a bit in shock, so he didn't grey rock well, but that's understandable. My husband did bring up that he doesn't want to cause any drama with the family, and his dad told him his mom wants to hug him. He didn't know about his mom calling me danger and calling us mentally unstable back in October, but also got mad for a minute and said that we should get over it, because my Mil and him, Phil, already did. Then they got off the phone a minute later cause his dad had to get off the phone. The great uncle was one my husband had spent a lot of time with in the past, and my husband wants to go to the funeral. He refuses to go down there without me. He has asked me to go with him. I feel so badly, because I'm having an anxiety attack about seeing my witch of a Mil and Sil, but I want to support my husband. If we go, we will stay in hotel, and I have asked that we don't do anything with them outside of maybe seeing them at the funeral. My husband didn't look certain that he could uphold that, and I'm not either. I'm freaking out. I don't want to make this about me. I refuse to speak to my Mil or Sil, even there, but I will otherwise act with grace. If it will cause a huge scene, at a funeral, which I feel would be disrespectful to my husband's great uncle, I will of course say a word or two to them. I don't want to cause a scene, but I want to keep up our boundaries. If we refuse to eat with them, sit with them at the funeral, or visit them at their house, though, I know it will be fuel for their crap. He has said we won't deal with them more than a few seconds, and he will have my back. But I don't know if I can believe him. If you want to know why, read my husband's first post, link in my last post, and I have a big problem with anxiety. Help. Any advice on how to not care, stay calm and controlled, but respectful, and to not have an anxiety attack. Sorry for the spelling, I've been crying while writing this. Please don't post this elsewhere. Update. We did end up going, and I kinda wish we hadn't. The funeral itself was fine, but the fact that my husband wanted to directly talk to his parents in person after the funeral. It did open his eyes though. He realized his mom is not the only problem person, something I've been warning him is possible, since his dad yelled at me. My husband did kind of stand up for me when his dad started yelling at me. He jumped up and yelled at his father that his father can't yell at me, followed by a tense few minutes and his father leaving the room for a bit, before once again my husband kind of didn't stand up for me the best. I was so proud of myself. I am a hothead, my husband isn't, and my Mil 100% apparently doesn't know her son, since she thinks her son is a hothead. No, he just will apparently stand up for me when his dad tries to yell at me. But while I had every opportunity to argue, rage, or tell them how it really is in a snarky way, I stayed calm and held my tongue for the most part. You guys have no idea how surprised I was with myself. But I did it. My husband is still kinda in the fog a bit. His mother did cry and she actually did apologize for a few things, but as my Phil said, she was only doing to appease my husband. I did not accept the apologies. All I could think of when in the rooms with them was that I don't have to engage, I owe them nothing, and I never have to choose to put myself in that situation again. That said, I am still mad at my husband. In my mind he has at least partially failed me 3 times in the past week, and we have been talking about it. He has apologized, and we are trying to sit down and talk about the issues, list out the problem. We are figuring things out, but it's slow going and we are still processing this past weekend. I will say my husband did about as good in the moment as I could reasonably expect of someone who has been brainwashed for years by these people. We see the new marriage counselor this week, the old one retired, and it will be our first marriage counseling session in 2023, wish us luck that the counselor is a good fit. We still have a bunch of feelings to get through and to talk about together, and I have seriously brought up a formal separation a few times this past weekend. I will probably type out a full description of what went down later this week or in the next few weeks, since literally getting this out here and reading comments from you guys is so helpful to me, but for now I just want to say thank you to everyone who commented. If you're interested in what really happened, stay tuned in the coming weeks. Thanks. Comment. If she tries to speak to you, you are made of stone. If she looks your way, stare at the wall a little to your right, it will drive her mad. Stay next to your husband as much as possible. If there's any other just yes family members, maybe talk to them, but this is hubby's family, so try to stay linked with him. Bonus points if you bring flowers for spouse of the deceased, just don't do yellow, naivete in bouquet speak. Up, you have every right to have a boundary that you do not want to deal with his in-laws. I get he's grieving, but he can't put you through a large amount of stress over this. Propose this compromise: you go with him, however, you stay at the hotel when funeral services are happening, or you do something on your own. You tell your husband that you'll be with him in the city, and in spirit at the funeral services, but you won't physically be at the funeral services. The most you can go to with him is to the hotel. The services and family are his to deal with. What he wants is a meat shield to protect him from his parents. That's cowardly. He needs to adult up and finally deal with his abusive parents on his own. With you there, they can still blame you, and he, your husband, knows this. Without you, he doesn't have a shield. If you're willing to compromise, at most, go with him to the city and stay at the hotel with him. Tell him you'll have your phone on you and he can text or call you when things get hinky with his family, but you will not be there, and no, none of this, but you've come all this way bullshit. They're not your family, they're his. You may be his spouse, and you should comfort and console him and be his support, but you don't have to do so at your expense. Good luck. Neither of you should attend the funeral. Stay home and stop answering Phil's calls. He is using this situation to pressure you and DH to resume contact without holding Mil and Sil accountable. According to Phil, they are over it, so you and DH should be too. How you and DH handle this will set the expectation for the future. Funerals are for the living to console one another and share memories of the person who passed. My suggestion: the day of the funeral, you and DH take a memorial walk. During the walk, DH shares his memories of his uncle. This way he will be honoring his uncle without breaking anxiety. You and he may want to make the nature walk becomes a yearly remembrance. Next story 2. Mil making husband's grandfather's funeral all about her. My husband and I are in our mid-30s. When he was 3 he lost his dad. His mom has since found someone new, let's call him Ned, and they've been together for around 20 years now. Ned has been a great stepfather to my husband and even helped us with money when we were buying our house. Last week my husband's grandfather died. As in his father's dad, so no direct relation to his mom. She has spent the last week just venting her feelings to my husband instead of trying to at all be there for her son who just lost his grandfather, who was also an important connection to his dead dad. Now here's where things get super wild. She had the audacity to email his aunts asking them to change the obituary to include her as the widow of the grandfather's late son. This makes absolutely no sense since she's been with Ned for so long. When her mom died a few years ago, the late husband was not mentioned in the obituary, but Ned was, as he should have been BTW. When the sisters brushed her off, which is nicer than I would have been, she complained about this to my husband. She's also been bugging the sisters to figure out where she is going to park for everything, even though they have enough going on dealing with their dad's death and planning a funeral. Oh, and she also wrote basically her own obituary to send to these poor sisters with her at the center, and then complained to my husband that it must not be good enough. Now yesterday we found out there will be a gathering at a local pub tonight after the wake. We kind of hoped she'd watch our kids so my husband could go and I could go to support him. Instead she assumed we would stay behind while she went to the dinner/gathering alone. When my husband hinted that we would like to go but lacked childcare, she volunteered Ned, who has never watched the children alone. Now I trust him and he's a great granddad, but again, he's never done this before and they aren't going to be ways to settle in a new place. We are all staying at an Airbnb together because we live too far to drive back and forth both days. I'm just ready to lose my mind. How does she not see this whole thing should be about her son losing his grandfather and not at all about her? Comment. LOL, she sounds like my mom. When my husband died in an accident, at first she was like, oh that's too bad. She didn't care much for him because he didn't have money. She goes to a prestigious church. Imagine senators, rich people attend this church. Anyway, word was out about his death, because, shocker, the prestigious people that she wants so badly to like her, were all talking about his passing and I guess giving my wacko sil from husband's family condolences and sympathy. My mom was hearing how everyone spoke highly of my husband. My mom called me frantic because she didn't know that my husband knew any of the right people. And she was upset because she tried telling people at her church that he was her son-in-law, her daughter, whom now she claims, husband. And nobody would believe her. She demanded that I put her name in the obituary as his mil so people can feel sorry for her too. I'm in major grief with all of this, and she is worried because the right people are not now sympathizing with her. Plus I'm sure she was hoping to cash in with donations. She already took all the food that was sent to me and my youngest that was still at home, because golly, the food was actually for her because she was helping me. Why? She has the expectation as a queen bee that the spotlight must always be on her regardless of anyone else's grief. Her behavior is selfish, self-centered, and possibly sick in the head. Something similar happened when a family member passed and the family gathered with the minister to share their thoughts for the eulogy. The widow shared irrelevant information that was all about her. Finally one brave soul had the courage to say, "Stop. This isn't about you," and asked the minister to scratch it all and start over. It was classic and so appropriate. Stop waiting for her to magically pick up the hints and sense things by becoming a better, more compassionate person. She won't. She's a selfish, self-absorbed narcissist who wants to be the center of attention at all times and doesn't give a shot about the appropriateness of what she's doing or your husband's feelings. You will have to find your spine, stop hinting and tiptoeing around her and be blunt. Tell her straight out she's being selfish and making herself look like a bellend and that everyone resents and deplores her behavior but is too polite/grief-stricken to say it. So you'll say it? Tell her bluntly to shut up, keep her beak out and stay in her lane. Be explicit. E.g., don't try and force your way to sit in the front row at the service, no loud exhibitions of crying, not welcome at the wake, etc., etc. Step in and be the bad guy or she will completely railroad all of you.